Lesson 1. Part 1. Barren. The barren land could produce little food. Bump. The room was dark, and I bumped my head against the door. Devise. He devised a new method for teaching the blind. Exert. My wife's been exerting a lot of pressure on me to change my job. Intrigue. The king's younger brother took part in the intrigue to make himself king. The book's unusual title intrigued me into reading it. Oath. He placed his right hand on the Bible as he spoke the oath of office. Postpone. They had to postpone their trip because of rain. Refuge. The cat took refuge from the dog behind a tree. Regain. It took her a long time to regain her health. Shatter. Their hope of finding him alive was shattered when his dead body was found. Tease. At school, the other children always teased me because I was fat. Tilt. He tilted his chair back too far and fell on the floor. Version. Do you have the English version of this book? Your version of the accident differs from that of the other witness. Part 2. Absurd. His belief that he was too clever to be caught in his wrongdoing was absurd. Alien. After 10 years, his alien speech was still noticeable. Amiable. She is an amiable girl and gets along with everyone in the office. Ban. In most countries, the sale of liquor to children is banned. Figurative. The sweet temper is a figurative expression, but sweet coffee is not. Genuine. Her wedding ring is made of genuine diamond. Hoist. They hoist the national flag at 6 o'clock every morning. Incorrect. The newspaper gave an incorrect account of the traffic accident. Massive. The house was built on a massive rock. Stale. There was only a piece of stale cake left in the refrigerator. Thrive. Most flowers will not thrive without water and sunshine. Wholesale. They buy at wholesale and sell at retail. Part 3. Annoy. The baby is always annoying his sister by pulling her hair. Celebrate. We celebrated Christmas with trees and presents. Diplomat. The unsociable person is hardly fit for a diplomat. Foresee. It is impossible to foresee whether she'll be well enough to come home from the hospital next month. Induce. We couldn't induce the old lady to travel by air. Mobilize. Our country is in great danger. We must mobilize the army. Precede. Mr. Eisenhower preceded Mr. Kennedy as President of the United States. Predetermine. Some people believe that man's destiny is predetermined. Prevail. Making resolutions on New Year's Day is a custom that still prevails. Subtle. Her subtle smile made him curious. Transact. The man transacts many affairs connected with the purchase of a home. Treason. Helping the enemies of one's country is an apparent treason. Utilize. How can we utilize his knowledge and skill to our advantage? Part 4. Bosom. She wore a flower on the bosom of her dress. Diploma. When a person has successfully completed a certain course of study, he is given a diploma by the school. Dramatic. The meeting between the mother and her blind son was dramatic. Fume. The strong fumes of the automobile exhaust nearly choked him. Hurrah! Hurrah! They shouted as the team scored again. Miniature. In the museum, there is a miniature of the ship the Mayflower. The child was playing on the floor with his collection of miniature farm animals. Parcel. On her birthday, her arms were filled with gift parcels. Pill. The pill stuck in his throat, but an extra drink of water washed it down. Racket. The students made a big racket as they left the school. Rhyme. The poet used the word flight as a rhyme for the word night. Scar. The man looks terrible. He has many scars on his cheeks. Sculpture. There are many famous sculptures in the museum. Skip. When I read a book, I usually skip over the uninteresting part.
Part 1. Apparatus. The town has recently purchased some new firefighting apparatus. Assert. The witness asserted that the salesman was dishonest. Assign. He was pleased that he was assigned such an easy task in the company. Compensate. He gave me a new knife to compensate for the one of mine he lost. Deem. He would deem it an honor if the minister came to see him. Specimen. He collects specimens of all kinds of rocks and minerals. Stimulate. The beating of a drum on the battlefield stimulated the soldiers to fight more bravely. Tendency. Boys have a stronger tendency to fight than girls. Testify. He testified that the car was being driven slowly at the time of the accident. Tourist. Each year, many foreign tourists visit Taiwan for sightseeing. Utility. Their furniture was chosen for utility rather than for elegance. Part 2. Blunt. Too much alcohol makes all your senses blunt. Elastic. Toy balloons, sponges, and steel springs are elastic. Exit. He left the building through the rear exit. When the cat came in, the little mouse made a hasty exit. Fatigue. He was pale with fatigue after his sleepless night. Heir. When he died, his young nephew was the only heir to his great wealth. Inflate. As the currency of a country is inflated, the prices of goods begin to rise. Plump. She is too plump to fit into this dress. Utterly exhausted, she plumped down on a chair. Recall. Mother could recall stories that she had heard years ago. The government recalled the general after he lost the battle. Shun. You can hardly shun meeting her if you and she both work in the same office. Sneer. The mean girl sneered at the poor girl's cheap clothes. Part 3. Adjoin. Canada and Mexico adjoin the United States of America. Ally. Great Britain, France, and Italy were allied during the First World War. Great Britain and the United States were allies in both world wars. Chaste. Her parents teach her to be chaste and decent in her behavior. Confide. When she was a child, she always confided her problems to her sister. We can't confide in his words, for he often breaks his promises. Defy. The driver of the car was defying the traffic law by speeding. Disrupt. An accident has disrupted railway service into and out of the city. Slavery seemed likely to disrupt the Union. Enable. The bird's large wings enable it to fly very fast. Fantastic. The wall was covered with many fantastic pictures and photographs. Impact. The force of the impact threw the driver out of the car. Interfere. It is best not to interfere in other people's arguments. Minimize. You can minimize the dangers of driving by taking care to obey all the rules of the road. Narrate. Shall I narrate a strange experience of mine? Visual. The contrasting colors created an interesting visual effect. Part 4. Appliance. The modern house has many useful electrical appliances. The appliance of electricity to household tasks makes housework much easier. Brood. There are 12 chickens in this brood. She brooded on her past mistakes so much that she became ill. Fringe. The woodcutter had a little house on the fringe of the forest. Gravel. The path to the house was covered with gravel. Hut. In the storm, they found a shabby hut in the forest. Lure. The fisherman had some bright-colored lures to attract fish. The hope of high profits lured him into questionable dealings. Perch. The bird flew down from its perch in the cage. The bird perched on the woman's shoulder. Retail. Most people buy meat and groceries at retail. Stride. Great strides have been made in science since 1900. Swarm. A swarm of people surrounded the car to see the famous actress in it. Rural populations swarmed into nearby towns. Twig. The tree bears so many apples that the twigs seem almost broken down. Wade. The bridge is far away from here. We'd better wade across the stream. Wrinkle. She is beginning to get many wrinkles around her eyes.
Lesson 3. Part 1. Alter. If the coat is too large, the tailor can alter it to fit you. Doom. As the ship sank, they faced their doom. Fragile. This old dish is in a very fragile condition. Fruitful. We had a very fruitful discussion in the classroom. Garrison. The Japanese garrison on Wake surrendered at the end of World War II. Hurl. The hunter hurled a long, sharp spear at the bear. Jail. The judge sent him to jail for 6 days. Quest. She went to the library in quest of something to read. Refrain. In order to lose weight, she refrained from eating candy. Script. I could easily recognize my father's careful script. Shabby. You look rather shabby in those clothes. Temporary. Many students find temporary jobs during their summer holidays. Urgent. The refugees are in urgent need of medical supplies. Part 2. Alert. A good hunting dog is alert to every sound and movement in the field. Artificial. The artificial flowers were made of paper and cloth. She welcomed us with an artificial smile on her face. Ascend. He watched the airplane ascend higher and higher. Disgrace. A doctor like him is a disgrace to our hospital. Grudge. I always feel she has a grudge against me, although I don't know what wrong I have done to her. Nun. My aunt is a nun. She can't get married and has to live a life of prayer and worship. Random. The room was filled with a random selection of furniture. Steadfast. He was so steadfast to his principles that we couldn't move him. Subordinate. A clerk in a business occupies a subordinate position to that of the owner. A good leader is the one that is respected by his subordinates. Thrift. Her thrift saved them enough money to buy a house. Treacherous. The treacherous soldier carried some important pieces of information to the enemy. Troublesome. He is a troublesome child. He is not obedient to his parents. Part 3. Alternative. Her father gave her the alternative of staying in high school or going to work. Bulge. The bag of candy made a bulge in the child's pocket. Congratulate. Let me congratulate you on the birth of your son. Contradiction. Contradiction by the students always makes my teacher angry. It is a contradiction to say you support the government but would not vote for it in an election. Detect. Small quantities of poison were detected in the dead man's stomach. Execute. The plan was good in every respect, but it was badly executed. Intervene. A week intervenes between Christmas and New Year's Day. Monster. That dog is a real monster. I have never seen such a big one. Paralyze. His arm was paralyzed as the result of the accident. Revive. He was nearly drowned, but we revived him. Stagger. The boy staggered and fell under the heavy load of books. Subsequent. The story will be continued in subsequent issues of the magazine. Part 4. Cling. The two friends cling together wherever they go. Countenance. The actor had a handsome and distinguished countenance. Dimension. He ordered wallpaper for a room of the following dimensions: 16 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 8 feet high. Erase. He erased the wrong answer and wrote in the right one. Growl. The dog was angry and growled at the stranger. Lick. The cat licked up the drops of milk from the floor. Postage. The postage for airmail is greater than that for regular mail. Poultry. This market has fresh poultry for sale at the beginning of every month. Prick. When she was sewing, she pricked her finger and made it bleed. Skim. The cook skimmed the fat from the soup. I watched many seabirds skimming the waves looking for food. Stitch. She made a neat row of stitches along the edge of her skirt. Undergo. She underwent a thorough examination at the hospital according to the doctor's order. Wharf. Passengers were waiting on the wharf to board the ship.
Lesson 4. Part 1. Bellow. He bellowed with pain when the tooth was pulled out. Beverage. In some countries, it is illegal to sell alcoholic beverages on Sunday. Calculate. You must calculate all the advantages and disadvantages before coming to a decision. Glamour. The glamour of the life of an actress made her give up her study. Outfit. She bought him a baseball outfit for his birthday. Rascal. Two rascals tricked the old man out of his money. Render. The organization renders great service to the community. His fatness renders him unable to touch his toes. Safeguard. Keeping clean is a safeguard against disease. Schedule. According to the production schedule, the factory is supposed to turn out 100 cars a day. The President's speech is scheduled on next Friday. Strap. The general wore straps on the shoulders of his uniform. Tomb. When the king died, the people placed his body in a large tomb made of stone. Transmit. Her illness was transmitted to other members of the family. Wrath. The king's unjust laws raised a great wrath among the people. Part 2. Baggy. Old people sometimes have baggy skin under their eyes. Beneficial. The new hospital will be beneficial to the poor people. Disgust. The smell of the rotten meat filled her with disgust. The impolite manner of that man disgusted many people. Drought. The water level in the reservoir was low because of the long drought. Exterior. The exterior surface of the house was bleached by the sunlight. Eliminate. A part of the program was eliminated to save time. Gorgeous. Children shouted when they saw the peacock spread its gorgeous tail. Illegal. He was arrested for the illegal sale of guns. Lad. We lived on a peaceful farm when I was a lad. Retain. In the United States, most married women do not retain their maiden names. Tilt. You tilt your head forward when you bow. Veto. The governor's veto kept the bill from becoming a law. His parents vetoed his plan to buy a motorcycle. Part 3. Abbreviate. His book was abbreviated and appeared in a public magazine. Available. There were no tickets available for Friday's music performance. Bribe. The judge was accused of taking a bribe to free the prisoner. Chat. The woman chatted on the phone for almost an hour. Contempt. We feel contempt for a liar or a thief. Fraction. She's careful with her money and spends only a fraction of her earnings. Idol. A stone idol stood at the entrance of the village. Inherit. After the farmer's death, his wife and children will inherit the farm. Reproduce. She reproduced the contents of her husband's letter from memory. Shrink. Washing wool in hot water will make it shrink. Tempt. The sight of the food tempted the hungry man to steal. Vital. He was lucky that the bullet had not entered a vital organ. Part 4. Abuse. Don't abuse your health by working when you ought to be sleeping or resting. His abuse of power has turned his friends against him. Brand. What brand of cigarettes do you want to smoke? On big farms, cattle are usually branded to identify the owner of them. Compress. Compressed air has a great deal of force when it is released. Corridor. You will find room 101 at the end of the corridor. Hatch. The spies hatched a scheme to steal government secrets. We hatch the eggs by keeping them in a warm place. Imply. Her letter implies that she wishes to meet you. Logic. Logic is not the science of belief, but the science of proof or evidence. Merchandise. The store had a large stock of merchandise. Preside. The mayor presided over the town meeting. Procure. They procured the money needed to build the hospital. The traders procured the death of the prince. Ruffle. A sudden breeze ruffled the surface of the calm lake. Soar. The price of sugar soars when sugar is scarce. Surplus. He kept enough corn to feed his cattle and sold the surplus.
Lesson 5. Part 1. Anticipate. Mother anticipated my hunger and baked cookies for me. Aspire. In his childhood, he aspired to become a great general. Attorney. The court appointed an attorney for the accused man. Counsel. They refused to listen to the old man's counsel. They counseled against traveling at night in such a dangerous country. Falter. The soldiers faltered for a moment as their captain fell. The sick man faltered a few steps and then fell down. Ghastly. After a sleepless night, she looked very ghastly. Gratitude. She showed me her gratitude by inviting me to dinner. Plume. The rooster lost one of his plumes in the fight with the cat. Promote. The young army officer was promoted to captain. An understanding of the culture of other countries may promote peace. Shudder. She shuddered at the sight of the dead body. Swamp. The land is useless for growing crops. It's mainly swamp. Terrific. The terrific storm destroyed most of the houses in the city. It was such a terrific party that I didn't feel like going back home. Villain. The villain was caught by the police and brought to trial. Part 2. Absent-minded. The absent-minded man put salt in his coffee and sugar on his egg. Acute. A dog has a very acute sense of smell. Entry. Leave the boxes in the entry and we will carry them up later. His sudden entry startled all of us. Immigrate. During the 1800s, many thousands of people from Europe immigrated into the United States to make a new home. Intensify. My first failure only intensified my desire to succeed. Invariable. After dinner, it was his invariable habit to take a nap for a while. Latitude. 1 degree of latitude on the Earth's surface equals almost 70 miles. Second-hand. The books in the second-hand bookstore are very cheap. Specify. Please specify when you will be at home tomorrow. Trivial. Your composition has only a few trivial mistakes. Vulgar. She is a very vulgar woman to shout like that at the top of her voice. Part 3. Accommodate. The airplane is large enough to accommodate over 400 passengers. We have to accommodate ourselves to our changed circumstances. Bewilder. The old woman from the country was bewildered by the crowds and traffic in the big city. Circulate. Money circulates as it goes from person to person. Deceive. I trust him because I know he would never deceive me. Define. Some words are hard to define because they have many different uses. Disrupt. The accident disrupted railway service into and out of the city. Heredity. Some diseases develop because of the bad conditions one lives in, and others are present by heredity. Myth. There are many myths about how the world first began. Outrage. The use of atomic bombs would be an outrage against humanity. Patriot. Many patriots died while fighting in the war for independence. Penetrate. A bullet can penetrate this board or 2 inches into that wall. Restrict. In the United States, the sale of liquor is restricted to people over 21 years old. Temperament. Whether a person likes sports or not depends largely upon his temperament. Part 4. Blink. She blinked her eyes as the bright light shone on her. As the ship drew near to port in the darkness, we could see the lights blinking on land. Earthquake. Many buildings were damaged or completely destroyed by the earthquake last night. Exploit. The sergeant won the Medal of Honor for his exploits during the Korean War. Exploit. They are planning to exploit the oil under the sea. Famine. Many people died of hunger during the famine in India. Fraud. He carried out a number of frauds on trusting people who lent him money. Murmur. The children murmured as they memorized the poem. Patrol. Policemen patrol the city day and night so as to protect the lives and property of the citizens. Prime. Safety is a matter of prime importance. Recess. There will be a short recess before the next meeting. Reptile. Some reptiles, such as snakes or lizards, move very fast. Rustle. Her long silk dress rustled as she walked down the stairs. Scowl. He scowled at me when I asked for more money. Wretch. The poor wretch asked for food and a place to sleep.
Lesson 6. Part 1. Avenue. Many people walk down the avenue through the center of the park. Bestow. The president of the college bestowed honors on the best students. Brim. Please do not fill my cup up to the brim. The wide brim of her hat protected her face from the sun. Drastic. Drastic changes are necessary to improve the government of the country. Insight. We study science to gain insight into the world we live in. Plea. The driver's plea was that he did not see the stop sign. The kind man answered her plea for aid. Prestige. The doctor had great prestige among the members of his profession. Ripple. Throw a stone into still water and watch the ripples spread in rings. Shrill. The boy's mother shouted his name in a shrill voice. Stray. The little lamb had strayed from the flock. We couldn't find it. Trend. The trend of modern living is away from many old customs. Wreath. Many people hang wreaths on the window at Christmas. Part 2. Abstract. Some authors are not popular because their writings are too abstract. Accumulate. Through the years, he accumulated sufficient money to buy a farm. Ample. He has received ample praise for the work he did. Corrupt. If a government official accepts money to do things that he ought not to do, we say that he is corrupt. Extinct. Many animals that lived thousands of years ago are now extinct. Illuminate. The room was illuminated by 4 large lamps. Our interesting teacher could illuminate almost any subject we studied. Incredible. These results are incredible. I can't believe that they are accurate. Lament. All the people lamented the death of their president. Profound. Having taken the medicine, he fell into a profound sleep. Systematic. They made a systematic search for the lost car. Vivid. The terrible car accident is still vivid in my mind. Part 3. Betray. She betrayed her friends by breaking her promise. The boy's wet shoes betrayed the fact that he had walked in the rain. Comical. That's a comical hat you're wearing with all those flowers. Drowsy. Warm weather makes everyone become drowsy. Embarrass. They were embarrassed because there was not enough food for all the guests. Fabric. Suits and dresses are made of cloths of different fabric. The whole fabric of society was changed by the war. Hesitate. I hesitated about taking his side until I knew the whole story. Pregnant. The newly wedded woman has been pregnant for 5 months. React. He reacted to my question with much surprise. Repulse. Our soldiers repulsed the enemy force which invaded the front line area. Tenant. That building has apartments for 100 tenants. Unconscious. He was knocked unconscious when the car struck him. Part 4. Aristocrat. For many years, only aristocrats were members of the government. Biography. After reading a biography of Lincoln, I was able to tell many stories about the president. Channel. There's a channel in the middle of the old street to help water flow away when it rains. Cherish. The old woman cherished the girl as if she were her daughter. All the women cherished the hope of their husband's safe return from fishing on the sea. Daze. A blow on the head dazed him so that he could not find his way home. Dismay. He was dismayed by the sight of the burning house. Haul. The logs were loaded on the wagons and hauled to the mill by horses. Mess. I've never seen so much mess and disorder anywhere. Mound. The explorers climbed a mound to survey the land around them. Ranch. The children spent the summer vacation on their grandfather's ranch. Repeal. The new government repealed many old laws. Rumble. She was awakened during the storm by the rumbles of thunder. Tuck. She tucked up her skirt and climbed over the fence.
Lesson 7. Part 1. Batter. There is someone battering at the door. You'd better let him in. Clutch. The mother clutched her baby in her arms. Contemplate. The police contemplated various kinds of trouble after the football match between the two universities. Garbage. Please leave your garbage in a can outside the door. Obstacle. A fallen tree across the road was an obstacle to our car. Pious. She is a pious woman who goes to church every morning. Regulate. The school adopted new rules to regulate the behavior of students. My watch is losing time. I will have to regulate it. Riot. The riot during the election was put down by the police. Shovel. We had better move this tree to our garden. Would you please bring the shovel? Stately. We were much impressed by the general's stately appearance. Tow. They towed the wrecked car to the nearest garage. Upset. Her plans were upset by the change of the weather. Vex. His father was vexed by the child's impolite behavior. Part 2. Communism. Communism is expressed in various movements, but Russian Sovietism is often referred to as a good sample. Dignify. They dignified her job by giving her a special title. Disaster. A great flood, fire, earthquake, or great loss of money is a disaster. Gloom. The maple shade provided him with a rich gloom for sleeping. Hospitable. He is hospitable to anybody. He likes to give attention to the needs of others. Infant. The woman was carrying an infant in her arms. Mature. You mustn't be jealous when your sister gets presents. You must learn to behave in a more mature way. Prejudice. She has a prejudice against popular music. Simplify. The theory was simplified to make it easier to understand. Tranquil. After he retired, he lived a tranquil life in the country. Unworthy. You shouldn't trust him. He is unworthy of your trust. Valid. His objections to the plan on the basis of cost are valid. Part 3. A lie. The workers of the factories allied against the big employers and asked them for better wages. Approximate. The approximate length of a meter is 40 inches. The exact length is 39.37 inches. Approximate. Your account of what happened approximates the truth, but there are several small errors. Athlete. The young athlete was much admired for his speed. Certify. This diploma certifies that you have completed high school. Coincide. My religious beliefs and yours do not coincide. Convey. A truck conveyed my furniture to my new home. Discreet. It wasn't discreet of you to call him around midnight. Evolve. The British political system has evolved over several centuries. Identify. The good king identified the well-being of his people with his own. I could identify the coat at once. It was my brother's. Radiate. The sun radiates light and heat. Supervise. The architect supervised the building of the house. Torrent. A torrent of water swept down the valley. Part 4. Anniversary. My parents invited their friends to their 30th wedding anniversary. Barracks. You can't expect soldiers to live in a barracks like that. Creed. Honesty is the best policy, was his creed through his whole life. Drip. We have to fix the roof. Water is dripping down from the ceiling. Hound. A good hound should have a sharp sense of smell. Jerk. As the water was unexpectedly hot, he jerked his hand out. As he stopped the car with a jerk, we were all thrown to the floor. Mold. The artist molded the clay into a figure of a child. Paste. The clerk used thick paste to put the label on the package. Patron. She has been a patron of this store for many years. The patrons of the museum contributed the money for the new museum building. Razor. John shaved off his beard with an electric razor. Slap. She slapped the boy on the cheek for disobedience, and he began to cry. Suicide. The police think that the death was by suicide. Telegraph. Mother sent me a message by telegraph that she would arrive home by an afternoon plane.
Lesson 8. Part 1. Abrupt. He made an abrupt turn to avoid hitting another car. The road made an abrupt rise up the hill. Acknowledge. I'm sure that she will soon acknowledge her own faults. We should always acknowledge gifts as soon as we receive them. Beware. You should beware of bad companions. They may corrupt you. Dwell. They dwell in the country but work in the city. Endow. The rich man endowed the college he had attended. Nature endowed her with both a good mind and good looks. Pathetic. The lost child I met on the street was very pathetic. Reap. Giant machines reap the wheat grown in the field. Reproach. When he came home drunk, his wife reproached him with a loud, angry voice. Rigorous. Rigorous exercise can damage health instead of improving it. He made a rigorous study of the plants in the tropical area. Sustain. The large columns sustained the weight of the roof. Torment. She is often tormented with violent headaches. Part 2. Abolish. Slavery was abolished in the United States in 1865. Anguish. The injured soldier moaned in anguish until the doctor arrived. Awkward. He needs a great deal of driving practice. He is still awkward with his car. The meeting was at 9 o'clock, which was an awkward time for many people. Bliss. What bliss it is to be able to lie in bed instead of working. Expenditure. Such a great work requires the expenditure of much money and time. Primitive. Primitive people lived in caves and made tools from stones and animal bones. Prolong. The old woman's life was prolonged by the doctor's good care. Rural. They lived in a small rural community. Suspend. The hurricane suspended all ferry service for 3 days. Undistinguished. The book is very interesting, although it was written by an undistinguished author. Part 3. Concession. To reach agreement, both sides must make concessions. Deceit. The merchant always used deceit in his business dealings. Dedicate. The land on which the Battle of Gettysburg was fought was dedicated to the soldiers who had died there. Dizzy. When you spin round and stop suddenly, you feel dizzy. Economical. A good manager should be economical in the use of his funds. Infect. She infected the whole class with her influenza. Intolerant. The old man did not smoke himself and was so intolerant that he did not allow his friends to smoke when they visited him. Respective. The party ended and we all went off to our respective rooms. Scholar. He was respected as a great scholar of history. Technique. The pianist's technique was excellent, though his interpretation of the work was poor. Tedious. The long wait at the airport was really tedious. Part 4. Bristle. He was so frightened that his hair seemed to bristle. Commodity. Prices of household commodities have risen since the war began. Dispatch. The captain dispatched a boat to bring a doctor on board ship. Formal. You must write a formal acceptance to this invitation. Frantic. Frantic efforts were made to escape the sinking ship. Heave. He heaved the heavy box into the wagon. Hemisphere. North America and South America are in the Western Hemisphere. Install. The new owner of the house installed a telephone. The cat installed itself in a chair near the fireplace. Lash. I gave my horse a lash that sounded through the forest. Pension. He will start receiving a pension when he retires at 60. Scope. This book has greater scope than others on the same subject. Species. The wolf and the dog belong to the same species.
Lesson 9. Part 1. Assail. The enemy may assail our defense positions tomorrow. Barrier. Countries can no longer depend on mountain barriers for protection. Burglar. A burglar broke into my house last night. Devour. The fire devoured 20 square miles of forest. Dreary. It was a dreary day, cold and without sunshine. Fling. Boys like to fling stones into water. Homage. He bowed in homage to the unknown soldier. Inescapable. Death is inescapable. It comes to everyone. Radical. There are radical differences between the two systems. His ideas are too radical to be acceptable to most people. Shiver. The boys and girls were shivering all over with cold. Sly. The sly cat stole the meat while the cook's back was turned. Stall. Each horse was put in a separate stall. Vanquish. At first she shivered from her fear, but at last she could vanquish it. Part 2. Clumsy. He asked me such a clumsy question that I did not know what to reply. Conservative. Old people are usually more conservative than young people. Exhale. He lit his pipe and exhaled clouds of smoke. Homely. I was very disappointed to see her sister. She was a homely girl. Indefinite. Maybe or perhaps is a very indefinite answer. Obedient. The obedient dog quickly responded to his master's whistle. Precise. He gave a precise account of how much money he had spent. Rational. When people are very angry, they seldom act in a rational way. Rigid. In our home, it is a rigid rule to wash one's hands before eating. Timid. A timid child is apt to cry when he sees a strange person. Vertical. A vertical takeoff aircraft can rise straight from the ground without running along for some distance. Wholesome. Such a movie is not wholesome for young children. Part 3. Abandon. He abandoned his wife and went away with all their money. Barbarian. People who behave like barbarians are not welcome at this hotel. Essence. The essence of his religious teaching is love for all men. Harmony. My cat and dog never fight. They live together in perfect harmony. Indulge. He indulged his desire for cigarettes to a harmful extent. Intrude. I was unwilling to intrude upon them so late at night. Modify. The company modified the design of the automobile in order to make it more attractive. In the phrase, a green hat, the adjective green modifies the noun hat. Oppress. A good government will not oppress the people. Proficient. His mother is very proficient in music. Sequence. The books should be arranged in sequence according to author. Suburb. They would rather live in the suburbs than in the city. Summary. This history book has a summary at the end of each chapter. Vacancy. There are many vacancies in the parking lot when the stores are closed. Part 4. Alley. The truck was too large to pass through the alley. Apologize. I apologize to her for stepping on her foot. Dairy. We could see lots of milk products in the dairy. Discern. I was not able to discern the road in the dark. Jaw. The meat was so tough that his jaws hurt from chewing it. Limp. After falling down the stairs, he limped for several days. Pillar. The roof of the porch was supported by brick pillars. Potential. He is regarded as a potential leader of our political party. Refrigerator. In summer, we have to keep milk and meat in the refrigerator. Skull. He was knocked unconscious by a sudden blow on the skull. Strategy. Tactics refers to the disposition of armed forces in combat, whereas strategy refers to the overall plan of a nation at war. Trench. The soldiers dug trenches to protect themselves against enemy fire or attack. Undertake. I will undertake the responsibility of feeding your dogs while you are away. He always undertakes more than he can do.
Lesson 10. Part 1. Adore. All the girls in our school adore the handsome mathematics teacher, who happens to be a bachelor. Blend. A grocer must know how to blend different kinds of tea. These houses seem to blend well with the trees in the countryside. Breadth. The wise man has a great breadth of understanding. Commend. Many children were commended for their good deeds on Children's Day. Conspicuous. There are several conspicuous errors in your composition. Delusion. She is under the delusion that I'm going to give her a lot of money. Impatient. As she was impatient to start to school, she forgot to take her homework. Miracle. According to the Bible, Christ worked many miracles. Provisional. Let's arrange the provisional meeting for next Tuesday, even though we may have to change it. Restrain. She could not restrain the children from running into the street. Stroll. The old couple were strolling under the trees, arm in arm. Part 2. Cradle. The frightened baby refused to sleep in his cradle. Deny. Justice must not be denied to anyone, however poor he may be. Disperse. The crowd dispersed when the rain fell suddenly. Endanger. You will endanger your health if you work so hard every night. Fiction. Works of fiction are reviewed in the Sunday papers in England. Initial. His initial effort at skating was failure, but he succeeded the second time that he tried. Intimacy. The intimacy with which the two friends talked showed how fond they were of each other. Invade. At the beginning of World War II, Hitler invaded Poland without a declaration of war. Selfish. He was too selfish to share his candy with his little brother. Thrifty. Mr. Thompson is so thrifty that he is able to save more than half of his weekly salary. Voluntary. Voluntary workers built a road to the boys' camp. Part 3. Absorb. Anything black absorbs most of the light rays that fall on it. He was so absorbed in his reading that he did not hear the telephone ring. Accuse. It is wrong to accuse a person of crime unless you have proof that he is guilty. Adjust. You can adjust your chair to make it more comfortable. Erroneous. Years ago, many people held the erroneous belief that the earth was flat. Expend. He had expended much time and energy on that experiment. Fury. It's no use trying to argue with you when you fly into a fury. Liberate. Abraham Lincoln is the president who tried to liberate slaves. Perplex. He was so perplexed that he asked many persons for advice. Sovereign. When the 13 colonies won the Revolutionary War, America became a sovereign nation. Temperate. The temperate areas of the world are found to be north and south of the tropics. Part 4. Bout. Those are the two boxers who will appear in the main bout tonight. Category. The selfish man places all people into two categories, those he likes and those he dislikes. Choir. As the choir rose to sing, the people joined in, filling the church with the music of the first hymn. Compact. The salesman tied the customer's purchases into a compact bundle. Concentrate. The defeated troops were ordered to scatter and then concentrate 50 miles to the south. Emigrate. In the 19th century, many Europeans emigrated to America. Navigate. He navigated the ship across the Atlantic Ocean. Pane. The broken pane in the window was replaced by a man whose son threw a stone and broke it. Pest. We have to get rid of the pests in the garden. Salute. The soldiers saluted the flag by raising the right hand to the forehead as they passed it. Severe. The students who cheat in examinations will be given a severe punishment.
Part 1. Abode. The woodcutter's abode is a house in the forest. Annual. The company allows us an annual vacation of 2 weeks. Coax. The mother coaxed the boy to take the medicine, but he refused to take it. Colleague. The teacher's colleagues taught his classes while he was ill. Dispense. The Red Cross dispensed food and clothing to the flood victims. Gingerly. In the darkness, he turned to the left, stepping gingerly. Hug. The mother hugged her lost child and kissed him. Humiliate. The boys humiliated their parents by behaving badly in front of the guests. Obstruct. The mountain roads were obstructed by falling rocks. Overthrow. The government was overthrown. Recapture. The soldiers recaptured the city lost to the enemy. Slim. He is very slim, being 6 feet tall and weighing only 130 pounds. Vicinity. There are no houses for sale in this vicinity. The vicinity of the apartment to his office is an advantage on rainy days. Part 2. Arctic. The Arctic has an extremely cold winter. Attic. We store trunks in the attic of the house. Diminish. Poor crops so diminished the food supply that people were starving. Dishonest. A person who lies, cheats, or steals is dishonest. Drunken. The noisy, drunken man on the street was soon arrested by the police. Foe. The person who holds ill feelings against you is your foe. Foresee. He foresaw that his journey would be delayed by bad weather. Jolly. Everyone at the party was very jolly and didn't want to leave the party. Maximum. 16 miles in a day was the maximum distance we could walk. Mistress. She felt she was no longer mistress in her own house when her husband's mother came to stay. Prefix. Under in underline, dis in disappear, and pre in prepaid are prefixes. Relax. Discipline cannot be relaxed until the last day of school has passed. Superficial. The speaker had only a superficial knowledge of the subject. Part 3. Allege. The storekeeper alleged that the boy had stolen some fruit. Current. We read the daily newspaper to keep up with the current situation. Exalt. They were exalted by their son's success. Expand. The balloon expanded as it was filled with air. Industrialize. We have to make our every effort to industrialize our country. Justify. Your wish to go for a walk does not justify your leaving the baby alone in the house. Prescribe. The doctor prescribed a new medicine for the pain in my joints. Good citizens do what the laws prescribe. Presume. John didn't say when he would return, but I presume he'll be back for dinner. Slaughter. The cattle were sent to the city for slaughter. Statistics. These statistics show that the population of the country will be doubled in 10 years. Supplement. Today's newspaper has a supplement on the new automobile models. Trifle. You will not succeed if you waste your time on trifles such as movies and dances. Withdraw. He quickly withdrew his hand from the hot stove. Part 4. Armor. Nothing can break through the armor of the new tank. Buzz. The radio should be fixed. It buzzes whenever I turn it on. Cancer. A great many cancers can be cured, but only if properly treated before they have begun to spread. Collapse. The roof collapsed as a result of the fire. This table can be collapsed so I can store it easily when I'm not using it. Contemporary. In 1066, William landed in England, and a contemporary Englishman wrote the report of his landing. Our teacher reads the books of many contemporary authors to us. Exile. The political leaders were exiled to an island far away from the country. Infantry. Men in the infantry often march long distances. Monk. He left his successful business and life of luxury to become a monk. Orchard. These oranges come from an orchard in Florida. Pirate. The terrible pirates attacked a merchant ship again. Sullen. That boy becomes sullen if he is punished by his teachers. Telescope. He is studying the stars through a telescope. Usher. The usher of the theater helped us find our seats.
Lesson 12.
Part 1. Appropriate. Thick woolen clothes would not be appropriate for a hot summer day. You should not appropriate other people's belongings without their permission. Coarse. You mustn't use such coarse language when talking to innocent young girls. Legend. The stories about King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table are legends, not history. Mischief. He apologized for the mischief his false story had caused. Persist. If you persist in breaking the law, you will go to prison. In spite of washing, many stains persisted on the tablecloth. Prudent. In order to make a prudent decision, you must consider all of the possibilities carefully. Simultaneous. Everyone in the audience burst into simultaneous applause. Splash. The children were splashing water on each other in the swimming pool. Stubborn. The stubborn boy refused to listen to reasons for not going out in the rain. Symptom. A cough is sometimes a symptom of a serious disease. Trait. The chief traits of the American character are generosity and energy. Vile. She has a vile temper. It's impossible to live with her. Part 2. Adequate. His wages are not adequate to support his wife and children. Careless. A boy who is careless in what he does will never succeed. The brave soldiers did their duty, careless of dangers and discomforts. Chaos. His room was in a state of chaos after the burglar had left. Eminent. The most eminent doctors treated the king in his illness. Enlarge. The factory was enlarged to make room for more machinery. Fertile. This land is fertile. It is rich in material needed to sustain plant growth. Futile. All his attempts to unlock the door were futile, because he was using the wrong key. Grim. The judge's expression was grim when he told them they were to be shot. Impolite. It is impolite behavior to smoke in a crowded bus. Vague. The directions were so vague that it was impossible to complete the assignment. Part 3. Astronomy. Astronomy deals with the motions of the sun, moon, and stars. Controversy. There was a controversy about the location of the new school. Hazard. The ice on the roads is a hazard for driving and walking. Magnify. A lens magnifies the size of the words on the paper. Nominate. 3 times we nominated Tom for the president of our club, but he was never elected. Provoke. The dog is very dangerous when it is provoked. Don't throw 1 bone to 2 dogs. You'll only provoke a fight between them. Recite. My daughter is going to recite a poem at the Mother's Day program. Restore. The honest boy restored the money he had found to its owner. It took more than a year to restore the ancient castle. Tension. If you increase the tension of that violin string, it will break. The doctor said I was suffering from nervous tension. Tyrant. There is no tyrant who admits that he is a tyrant. Vigor. The vigor of a person's body lessens as he grows old. Part 4. Blot. The spilled ink left a blot on the letter paper. The ugly advertisement is a blot on the beautiful landscape. Caress. His mother's caress calmed the frightened child. Chuckle. He was chuckling to himself as he read that funny story. Claw. The cat usually catches a mouse with its claws. Craft. The art and crafts of the people are an important part of their culture. All kinds of crafts come into New York Harbor every day. Dainty. The violet and the dandelion are dainty spring flowers which could be seen in early March. Hermit. He lives in that forest alone. He is enjoying the hermit's life. Panel. Professor Wang participated in a panel to discuss the energy crisis. Phenomenon. Snow in Egypt is an almost unknown phenomenon of nature. Spectator. There were many spectators at the National Football League. Thrash. The host of the market thrashed the little boy for stealing apples.
Lesson 13. Part 1. Appeal. The government is appealing to everyone to save water. The music is too old-fashioned to appeal to people any longer. Bustle. There was a great bustle as the children got ready for the party. Crave. I'm craving for a cup of tea. I've not had one all day. Discord. Various discords have arisen in the university over this question. Drill. The English teacher gave the class plenty of drills in pronunciation. Eventually. We waited more than an hour for him, but eventually we had to leave without him. Futile. Please don't waste time by asking such futile questions. Ingredient. The ingredients of a cake usually include eggs, sugar, and flour. Predict. The Weather Service predicts heavy rain for tomorrow. Raid. During their raid on the house, the police found a lot of dangerous drugs. Repel. The enemy in the city was repelled by our troops. Rouse. The speaker tried to rouse the masses from their lack of interest. Tolerate. I can't tolerate your bad manners any longer. Utmost. She was standing at the utmost edge of the cliff to kill herself. Part 2. Assault. We are ready to meet the enemy's assault on our fort. Hostile. Their hostile looks showed that I was unwelcome. Independent. Since she inherited her father's fortune, she is completely independent of her husband. Inevitable. They ran short of money during the tour, and the return was inevitable. Link. The new road links all the towns in the state. Obscure. We had difficulty in finding the obscure path through the forest. Optimism. The candidate's optimism about his chances of winning encouraged his supporters. Serene. He kept serene and calm, knowing nothing of the dangers which surrounded him. Submit. No one would submit silently to such an insult. Summit. At last the mountain climbers reached the summit of the mountain. Unique. This proposal seems to be the unique solution to our problem. Vacuum. For that experiment, you need a complete vacuum. Veteran. At the age of 12, the boy was already a veteran traveler. having flown all over the world with his father. Part 3. Abide. A good housekeeper can't abide dust. If you join the club, you must abide by its rules. Allegiance. His allegiance to his country lasted all his life. Analyze. The food was analyzed and found to contain small amounts of poison. Consume. He consumed almost all the money he earned last summer. Dictate. The president of the company dictated a letter to his secretary. The country that won the war dictated the terms of peace to the conquered country. Fluent. He is very fluent in English, but not in French. Friction. Friction against the rock, combined with the weight of the climber, caused his rope to break. Miser. A miser lives poorly in order to save money and keep it. Monarch. The national band played for the visiting monarch. Partition. The partition of the country into two parts caused many problems. Qualify. Being the son of a member of Parliament doesn't qualify him to talk about politics. Succession. After a succession of warm days, the weather became cold. Tribute. Many conquered nations had to pay tribute to the rulers of ancient Rome. By erecting this statue, we have paid a tribute to the memory of the founder of our college. Part 4. Clue. The police could find no fingerprints or other clues to help them in solving the robbery. Cluster. She bought 2 clusters of grapes for her little son. Flush. Her face flushed when she could not answer the easy question. The stream was flushing after the heavy rain. Germ. The wound must be kept clean so that germs do not infect it. Grunt. I'm too tired, he grunted, and then fell asleep again. Junction. The 2 rivers make their junction near the sea. Pinch. He pinched the fruit to see if it was soft. Prairie. The prairie was ideal for growing wheat. Rim. The basketball hit the rim of the basket and bounced off. Shove. There was a lot of pushing and shoving to get on the bus. Stammer. Thank you very much, he stammered. Technical. He is studying automobile repairs at a technical school. Tint. The picture was painted in several tints of blue.
Lesson 14. Part 1. Bargain. The boys made a bargain with one another to exchange baseball gloves. These good shoes are a real bargain at such a low price. Belongings. She packed all her belongings in a box and took them with her. Besiege. Troy was besieged by the Greeks for 10 years. The teacher was besieged with questions and requests from pupils. Fowl. I prefer the taste of chicken to that of other kinds of fowl. Harsh. At the end of the football game, the cheerleader's voice became harsh. Menace. The crossroad in front of the school is a menace to the children's safety. Rapture. The beauty of the sunset filled everybody with rapture. Renown. Ladies and gentlemen, now I will introduce you to the renowned star of the stage and screen, John Wayne. Stool. I pulled the stool near the wall to hang a picture. Verify. We will repeat the experiment twice in order to verify the results. Part 2. Abnormal. His abnormal behavior shows that something is wrong. Abundance. At the party, there was food and drink in abundance. Apprentice. He worked 7 years at the printing company as an apprentice. Bearable. She said to the doctor that her pain would be just bearable. Immortal. Most people believe that a man's body dies, but his soul is immortal. Innumerable. The sun is one of the innumerable stars in the universe. Preliminary. The chairman made a preliminary statement before beginning the main business meeting. Remote. Some of your statements are rather remote from the subject we are discussing. Repose. His brief repose was interrupted by her sudden arrival. Shrewd. Although he had no formal education, he is one of the shrewd businessmen in the steel company. Temporary. He has a temporary job which ends in 2 weeks. Part 3. Automatic. An automatic timer turns the street lights on at night and off in the morning. Comprehend. The child read the story but did not comprehend its meaning. Cordial. When one of his former students visited him, the teacher gave him a cordial welcome. Elaborate. The scientists made an elaborate plan for landing a man on the moon. The inventor elaborated his plans for a new engine, spending several months in his laboratory. Expire. His term of office as president will expire next year. External. He judges people by mere external clothes rather than internal character. This newspaper doesn't pay enough attention to external affairs. Glorify. Singing hymns is one of the ways to glorify God. Priority. The badly wounded take priority for medical attention over those slightly hurt. Reliable. Send the boy to the bank for money. He is a reliable boy. Repetition. Repetition of the sentence helped him to memorize it. Survive. Only 3 of the 50 passengers survived the shipwreck. Part 4. Behalf. My husband can't be here today, so I'm going to speak on his behalf. Breed. The farmer breeds cattle and horses for market. Disguise. She disguised her writing by writing with her left hand. The thief wore a false beard and glasses as a disguise. Domain. The king is respected throughout his domain. I can't answer your question about photography. It's not in my domain. Morsel. The dinner must have been good because there is not even a morsel of it left over. Routine. Getting up and going to bed are parts of your daily routine. Transit. The points of transit from one country to another are carefully guarded. Transform. That dress transforms her from a little girl into a young lady. Ultimate. Her ultimate goal is to receive her degree and return to her country to work as a teacher. Warily. The hikers climbed warily up the dangerous path.
Lesson 15.
Part 1. A lot. The profits from the candy sale have been allotted equally to the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. Banner. The banners of many countries fly outside the headquarters of the United Nations. Cliff. Standing at the edge of the cliff, she could see the waves below. Crook. I crooked my leg around the branch to keep from falling. Ensue. In his anger, he hit the man, and a fight ensued. Gap. The cows ran away through a gap in the fence. Hoard. They have a hoard of food in the basement. When sugar, coffee, and other foods were scarce, many people hoarded them. Marsh. It is not easy to cross the marsh on foot. We'd better go round it. Moan. From time to time during the night there was a moan of pain from the sick man. The sick child moaned a little and then fell asleep. Notorious. The notorious thief was finally caught and put to prison for his many crimes. Sermon. After the guests left, Father gave a sermon on table manners to the children. Sight. The big house on the hill has one of the best sights in town. Suppress. The police suppressed the riot by firing over the heads of the crowd. Part 2. Agony. He has suffered agonies from his broken arm. Desolate. I was very desolate when my mother died last year. Everlasting. We do not want to be involved in any war. We wish for everlasting peace. Excess. Passengers must pay for excess baggage on an airplane. Gross. The gross weight of the sack of flour is more than the net weight of the flour alone. Idiot. He is intelligent, but sometimes he behaves like an idiot. Infinite. Teaching little children usually requires infinite patience. Integrate. The committee will try to integrate the different ideas into one uniform plan. Liable. He stated that he was not liable for his wife's debts. You are liable to catch a cold if you go out without an overcoat. Miscellaneous. The boy had a miscellaneous collection of stamps, stones, and many other things. Revenue. The government got much revenue from taxes last year. Trifling. The friends treated their quarrel as only a trifling matter. Part 3. Amend. The Constitution of the United States was amended so that women could vote. Architecture. Greek architecture was quite different from modern architecture. Clarify. The teacher's explanation clarified the puzzling problems. Concept. Some people still believe in the old concept that the sun moves around the earth. Dominant. John had a very dominant nature. We all did what he wanted. Edit. The teacher is editing famous speeches for use in school books. Portrait. She had her portrait painted by a famous artist. Precaution. They took heavy coats as a precaution against the possibility of cold weather. Pulse. The doctor began to measure my pulse rate per minute. Renew. I came back from my holiday with renewed strength. Transparent. The silk dress she was wearing at the party was almost transparent. Universal. It is a subject of universal interest. Everyone is interested in it. Part 4. Bullet. The captain was killed in the battle by an enemy's bullet. Congressman. Mary is very proud of her father. He is a congressman. Flake. The snow was falling on the ground in large flakes. Index. The teacher taught the pupils how to use the index of their textbook. Nuisance. Don't make a nuisance of yourself. Sit down and be quiet. Panic. When the theater caught fire, there was panic in the audience. Scramble. We scrambled up the rock for a better look at the sea. When the money fell on the floor, everyone scrambled to get some. Squeeze. She squeezed the juice out of several oranges. Strait. This ship sails through the Strait of Gibraltar, where the water is often rough. Submarine. The submarine will soon rise to the surface of the water. Vehicle. Main Street is crowded with vehicles every morning. Weave. My mother is weaving a winter sweater for me. Zinc. Zinc is combined with copper to make brass.
Lesson 16. Part 1. Attain. They fought against the tyranny to attain freedom. Commence. The ceremony will commence as soon as the minister arrives. Conceit. Her conceit about her beauty angered many people. Dismiss. He was dismissed from the company because he was always late for work. Glisten. Her eyes glistened with tears as she struggled to control her emotions. Grab. The dog grabbed the bone and ran off with it in his mouth. Hearty. We gave our old friends a hearty welcome. Kin. All our kin came to the family reunion. Peep. The girls peeped at the guests through the partly open door. Realm. The Queen visited every town in her realm. Part 2. Accurate. Her report is always accurate and well written. Ancestor. His ancestors came to America on the Mayflower. Dwarf. Children of the world love to read the story of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. Emerge. After the rain, the sun emerged from behind the clouds. Illusion. It was an illusion that made me think I saw a man in the shadow. Injustice. It is an injustice to send an innocent person to jail. Multitude. A multitude of European plants have been naturalized in America. Soothe. A hot cloth pressed against your jaw will usually soothe a toothache. The mother soothed her crying baby by ringing a bell in front of his face. Vicious. He gave the dog a vicious blow with his long stick. Void. An agreement signed by a child to repay borrowed money is void. That part of the town is completely void of interest for visitors. Part 3. Debate. We were debating whether to go to the mountains or to the seaside for our summer holidays. Extract. He extracted several paragraphs from the newspaper article to read at the meeting. Did you manage to extract any information from him? Facilitate. The broken lock facilitated my entrance into the empty house. Frail. The sick woman's frail hands could hardly hold a cup. Insignificant. The ideas of an insignificant person have no influence. Inspect. In this state, every car must be inspected annually by the Highway Patrol. Prohibit. Smoking is prohibited in public buildings or in the crowded bus. Repent. The criminal repented his crimes before the priest. Resolute. Despite the opposition from his family, he remained resolute in his decision. Suspend. The train schedule was suspended until the railroad tracks were repaired. The swing was suspended from a branch of the tree. Part 4. Bleak. In winter, when the trees are bare and snow covers the ground, the landscape is very bleak. Brisk. A brisk walk brings him home from work in a short time. Chip. When you sharpen a pencil, you make chips. Hearth. We talked about his death all night sitting around the hearth. Laundry. They sent their dirty clothes to the laundry. Overwhelm. At the beginning of the Second World War, the weapons that the enemy had overwhelmed ours. The village was overwhelmed when the floods came. Prevalent. The habit of traveling by aircraft is becoming more prevalent each year. Rumor. I heard a rumor that there would be a change in the cabinet. Scold. His parents scolded him for staying out so late at night. Shrug. When I asked him about his plans, he only shrugged his shoulders. Streak. There are streaks of gray appearing in his black hair. The cat streaked across the road with the dog behind it. Tug. The small child tugged the table across the room and broke the milk bottle on it.
Lesson 17. Part 1. Blunder. It was his great blunder to have ordered the soldiers to attack the enemy in the daytime. Brink. He fell over the brink of the cliff, but was only slightly hurt. Cab. It is very hard to catch a cab in the rush hour. Cast. The fishermen cast their nets into the sea. Component. A chemist can separate a medicine into its components. Convention. It is a matter of convention that men should open doors for ladies. Businessmen attend conventions to learn of new developments and products. Expel. A pupil who cheats or steals may be expelled from school. Notable. Taiwan has made notable progress in industry since 1960. Spectacle. The sunrise as seen from the top of the mountain was a great spectacle. The old man bought a new pair of spectacles. Tackle. He bought some fishing tackle in the store. The robber tried to run away, but a brave man ran and tackled him. Throng. At the railroad station, I saw throngs of passengers waiting for their trains. Waver. As I opened the window, the flame wavered and then went out. Part 2. Affirmative. Her final answer to my question would be affirmative. Amid. The woman teacher stood amid the crowd of little children. Appease. The angry man was not appeased until I said I was sorry. Eternal. Most religions in the world promise eternal life after one's death. Gallant. Mr. Johnson was one of the most gallant soldiers in our unit during World War II. Our garden was made gallant with roses and tulips. Gratify. Now that she has a job in France, she can gratify her desire to see Paris. Petty. The children's quarrels usually concern a petty problem. Sturdy. Children need sturdy clothes because they like to play so violently. Tropical. It is very hard to work in such tropical weather. Zoology. Zoology and botany are the two main branches of biology. Part 3. Administer. In the United States, the Secretary of State administers foreign affairs. Coordinate. If we coordinate our efforts, we should be able to defeat the enemy. Deprive. They deprive the criminal of his right to vote. Heritage. Many foreigners say that Chinese have a great cultural heritage. Insert. He inserted the key into the lock, but found it was a wrong key. Irritate. When she has a headache, the slightest noise irritates her. Legitimate. The boy couldn't give a legitimate reason for being absent from school. Margin. He made some important notes in the margin of the book. Allow a margin of money for unexpected expenses. Punctual. She's never punctual in answering letters. She's always late. Restrain. She could not restrain her curiosity to see what was in the box. Sensitive. The girl is very sensitive about her ugly appearance. Significant. October 10th, 1911, was a significant day for China. Part 4. Altar. The altar is the most sacred part of a church or temple. Bounce. I caught the ball on the first bounce. Bugle. Bugles have been used in military forces for sounding calls and orders. Charcoal. We cooked our food over burning charcoal. Crisis. The patient passed the crisis and began to regain his strength. Deputy. John will be my deputy while I am away. Grind. The mill grinds corn into meal and wheat into flour. Missionary. The missionary will be sent to Africa to teach and spread Christianity there. Premier. Winston Churchill is one of the well-known premiers of Great Britain. Recruit. The recruits were already given their uniforms, and now they are being drilled on the parade ground. Salvation. He proposed government loans for the salvation of several shaky business companies. Stand still. When I was walking along the street, a car came to a standstill near me. Trample. The herd of wild cattle trampled the farmer's crops. Yoke. Slaves are under the yoke of their masters.
Lesson 18.
Part 1. Adorn. He adorned his story with all sorts of adventures that never happened. Baggage. I need a man to carry my baggage to the train. Bunch. We sent him a bunch of flowers on his birthday. Clap. The children clapped when he finished his speech on Children's Day. Deliberate. A statesman should be deliberate in his political speeches. We were deliberating whether we should buy a new motor car. Enclose. We are going to enclose our backyard to keep the dogs out. I enclosed a check for $10 with the letter. Frontier. There were many guards and soldiers along the frontier. Implement. Plows and threshing machines are farm implements. Leap. He went over the fence with a single leap. Luster. This shampoo adds more luster to your hair than any other brand. Perfume. We enjoyed the perfume of the flowers in the garden. Swear. Will you swear to the truth of your statement? Part 2. Acquire. You must work hard to acquire a good command of a foreign language. Benevolent. The free food was given to a beggar by a benevolent person. Compliment. The famous actress was used to hearing audiences' compliments. Courtesy. Giving one's seat to a lady in a crowded bus is a sign of courtesy. Equivalent. He changed his pounds for the equivalent amount of dollars. Ingenious. My brother is so ingenious that he will think of a way to do the work more easily. Internal. An accident often causes internal injuries as well as cuts and wounds. Irresponsible. An irresponsible person deserves to be blamed and punished. Miserable. The child is cold, hungry, and tired, so of course he is miserable. Respond. When John insulted Tom, he responded with a kick. Tentative. We've made tentative plans for a holiday, but haven't decided anything certain yet. Part 3. Appetite. The little boy had no appetite, so his mother had to persuade him to eat. Assume. They assumed that the war would end in 6 months, but it proved wrong in a short time. He assumed the responsibility for planning and preparing the picnic. Conform. A citizen is expected to conform to the law of his country. Defer. The ship deferred its sailing because of bad weather. Do you always defer to your parents' wishes? Distract. What can we do to distract her mind from sorrow? Mutual. A family has a mutual affection when each person likes the others and is liked by them. Pacify. She pacified the crying child by giving him milk. Prominent. She hung the picture in a prominent position in the living room. Several prominent people were present at the meeting. Receipt. Ask the shop for a receipt when you pay the bill. Please notify me upon receipt of the package. Variable. The amount of heat produced by this electrical apparatus is variable by turning a small handle. Part 4. Associate. Don't associate with bad and dishonest boys. He has been my associate in several business enterprises. Chauffeur. They rented a car with a chauffeur for the winter trip. Dump. Don't dump that trash in the middle of the path. Dye. Many women like to dye their hair blonde. Feat. The first flight into space was a brilliant feat. Nasty. The medicine has a nasty smell and a nastier taste. Be tactful when you tell him because he has a very nasty temper. Plunder. The pirates entered the harbor and began to plunder the town. Speck. I found a few specks of dirt on the wallpaper. Strife. There has always been strife between the two countries. Strip. The monkey stripped the banana by taking off the skin. Tutor. Her father employed a tutor for her during her long illness. Twinkle. His eyes twinkled with delight when he heard the news that he had passed the entrance examination.
Lesson 19. Part 1. Cite. He cited a paragraph from the book to prove his statement. Esteem. All his friends held him in high esteem, for he was very sincere and diligent. Grumble. He was always grumbling about his low salary. Hideous. The old woman had such a hideous face that the girls couldn't even get close to her. Loiter. She loitered along the street, looking into all the show windows. Rip. She ripped her stocking on a sharp nail. Specs. She has very poor eyesight. She can read nothing without her specs. Threshold. Scientists are now on the threshold of a better understanding of how the human brain works. Token. All the family wore black as a token of their grief. Traitor. The traitors sold our important military secrets to the enemy. Uphold. The judge upheld the decision of the lower court. Yawn. He yawned several times during the lecture. He was not interested in it. Part 2. Advocate. The professor advocates building more schools than roads. Advocate. Many scientists who supported the production of atomic bombs are advocates of peace. Denial. The minister asked the newspaper to print a denial of the untrue story. Depart. We arrived in the village in the morning and departed that night. Flexible. Leather and rubber are flexible. Glass and iron are not. Formidable. The enemy's attack was more formidable than we had expected. Gale. The old tree at the top of the hill was blown down in the gale. Sane. The court judged the man sane, and therefore responsible for his acts. Underworld. Those who live by vice and crime would go to the underworld after death. Vanity. The girl's vanity made her look in the mirror often. Fame, power, wealth, all is vanity before death. Part 3. Convict. The judge convicted the accused man of theft. Convict. The policeman was chasing a convict who escaped from prison last night. Employee. That large factory has more than 1,000 employees who make cars. Envy. Some boys were full of envy when they saw my new bicycle. Impose. The judge imposed a fine of $500 on the guilty man. Invest. If I had any money, I would invest it in land. Legislate. In the United States, the Congress has the power to legislate. Maintain. He maintained a speed of 60 miles an hour on the highway. Petition. The people signed a petition to stop destruction of the historic buildings. Reconcile. They quarreled last week, but now they are completely reconciled. Sensation. I knew the train had stopped, but I had the sensation that it was moving backwards. The show was a great sensation for several weeks. Sociable. The secretary doesn't seem sociable. She likes to be left in the office alone. Part 4. All out. He made an all-out effort to be the best student in his class. Aptitude. The student shows a great aptitude for languages. He can learn a foreign language much faster than others. Axis. It takes 24 hours for the Earth to make one rotation on its axis. Budget. They planned a monthly budget for their family. Cargo. A cargo of coal has arrived from Keelung. Clergy. Members of the clergy are serious students of religion. Cripple. He became a cripple as a result of the accident. Dodge. The man jumped aside to dodge the speeding truck. Grin. The boy grinned with pleasure when I gave him candy. Headquarters. The policeman was ordered to report to the police headquarters. Retort. Your question is not worth answering, he retorted. Textile. We need to produce more textiles, especially silk and cotton. Thigh. The fisherman's boots came up to his thighs. Toilet. The youngest child has not yet learned how to use the toilet.
Lesson 20. Part 1. Attribute. We attribute Edison's success to intelligence and hard work. Politeness and kindness are attributes of a gentleman. Banish. England once banished many criminals to Australia. Barrier. The Sahara Desert is a natural barrier that separates northern and central Africa. Code. The city building code limits the height of new buildings. The enemy could not understand the code in which the general's letter was written. Hinder. You're hindering me in my work by talking all the time. Isolate. Several villages in the north have been isolated by heavy snowfall. Mist. During the autumn, the mountaintop is always covered in mist. Porter. The hotel porter carried their suitcases to their room. Subdue. They subdued the enemy and captured the city after a long battle. Tempest. The tempest forced the ship onto the rocks. Transform. The beautiful dress transformed the girl into a pretty young lady. Part 2. Amenable. People living in a country are amenable to its laws. Casual. Our long friendship began with a casual meeting at a Christmas party. Condense. A long story can sometimes be condensed into a few sentences. Detach. The engine was detached from the body of the train. One squad of soldiers was detached to guard the important road and bridge. Exaggerate. He exaggerated the dangers of the trip in order to frighten them into not going. Inadequate. He was tired because he had had inadequate sleep last night. Literate. A literate person can get knowledge through reading many books. Mansion. That old mansion has more than 20 rooms. Meek. He isn't bad-tempered. He is as meek as a lamb. Zeal. A good citizen works with zeal for his country's interests. Part 3. Agitate. We thought that the bad news would upset Tom, but it didn't seem to agitate him. The slightest wind agitates the leaves of the trees. Architect. We employed an architect to design our summer house. Bond. There is a close bond of affection between the two sisters. He is so honest that his spoken promise is as good as a bond. Dominate. The chairman's strong will dominated the committee, which did what he wanted without arguing. Integrate. He integrated ideas from several philosophers into his own philosophy. Publicity. His rescue of the child from the burning house brought him much publicity. Rely. Send the boy to the bank for money. We can rely on him. Retract. A cat can retract its claws, but a dog can't. You can depend on Frank. Once he has given his promise, he will not retract it. Unify. We should make every effort to unify China. Part 4. Broil. Flames flared as he broiled the meat on a fire in the backyard. When I left, 2 women were quarreling noisily. When I returned an hour later, they were still broiling. Desolate. A few desolate houses stood in the former mining town. She has led a desolate life since her husband's death. Gamble. A reckless young man gambled his fortune on a turn of cards in one night. Improve. I'll improve the shape of the handle so that it's easier to use. Incense. The official was incensed at the lack of respect shown to him. Incense is burnt in some religious services. Marine. What kinds of marine life are found in this ocean? Nourish. There are hundreds of children in the slums who need to be nourished. Phase. The old man overcame the critical phase of his illness. Spur. The horse leaped over the fence at the touch of the spur. Thaw. Exposed to the warm air, the frozen meat thawed rapidly. At first, the visitors were shy, but after drinking a glass of wine, they thawed.
Lesson 21.
Part 1. Allure. The beautiful beaches of Hawaii allure many tourists from the mainland of the United States. Anew. He made so many mistakes that he had to begin his work anew. Banquet. A banquet was given to honor the retiring president. Crouch. The cat saw the bird and crouched down ready to jump. Flank. The enemy may attack us on the left flank. Indignant. I was very indignant at the man, for he had treated me so badly. Meadow. They raise many cows and sheep in the meadow. Mobile. Many workmen aren't mobile. If they move to new employment, they have difficulties in moving their families. Reverse. Would you play the reverse side of that phonograph record, please? Reverse your sweater, or you will put it on wrong side out. Roam. The lovers roamed around the fields in complete forgetfulness of the time. Withstand. Children's furniture must withstand kicks and blows. Part 2. Concrete. Do you have any concrete ideas on how to deal with this difficulty? Exclude. The committee decided to exclude all foreigners from joining the club. Incomplete. My homework is incomplete, but I'll finish it by 3 o'clock this afternoon. Intellectual. Teaching or counseling is an intellectual occupation. Plural. Dog is a singular noun. Dogs is a plural noun. Quaint. American visitors to Taiwan admire our quaint traditions and customs. Savory. The savory smell of cooking pleased us when we entered the house. Submerge. The flooded river submerged most of the farmland in the valley. Ultimate. After many defeats, the war ended for us in ultimate victory. Violate. He violated the law and was arrested by the police. Part 3. Array. The soldiers were arrayed for battle in front of the general. She was arrayed like a queen in her colorful dress. Bald. The old man's bald head glistened in the sun. Classify. In a library, books are usually classified by subjects. Context. In some contexts, mad means crazy, but in others it may mean angry or foolish. Destin. I never thought I would marry her, but I suppose it was destined. Formulate. Formulate your ideas before you begin to write. Hoarse. A person with a bad cold usually has a hoarse voice. Inaugurate. The new President of the United States will be inaugurated on January 20th. Psychology. Child psychology is a required course in teacher training. Refine. Sugar, oil, and metals are refined before being used. Vengeance. He took vengeance on the men who had killed his father. Part 4. Aisle. The aisle was wide enough for only one person. Booth. He went into the telephone booth to call his wife. Bulletin. Sports bulletins and weather bulletins are published in most newspapers. Corpse. A man has reported to the police that he saw a corpse under the bridge. Extracurricular. Swimming and skating are popular extracurricular activities in our high school. Garage. You'd better keep your car in a garage while it's snowing. Knob. He turned the doorknob to open the door. License. While driving a car, you have to carry your driver's license with you. Parallel. Parallel lines run side by side, but never get nearer to or farther away from each other. Skeleton. The skeleton of the missing man was discovered in the cave. Tariff. There is a very high tariff on imported jewelry. Tickle. She tickled the baby's feet and made him laugh. Tray. The waiter carried the dishes on a tray.
Lesson 22. Part 1. Adjourn. The members of the club voted to adjourn their meeting until 5 p.m. Astonish. She was astonished to hear the news that she had won the first prize in the speech contest. Attire. The Queen was attired in blue for her birthday party. Candidate. There are 3 candidates for president of the club. Discipline. The discipline of his early hardships contributed to his success. Military schools are known for their strict discipline. Interpret. Please interpret the meaning of this foreign word that I've never heard. Lounge. There were some men and women who were lounging along the beach. Secure. By strengthening the riverbanks, the city secured itself against floods. Are you worried about passing the final exam, or do you feel secure? Siege. The country was in a state of siege, and tanks were lined up in front of the presidential palace. Strive. We should strive for the truth. Vocation. Teaching children ought to be a vocation as well as a way of earning money. Part 2. Amiable. Charlotte is an amiable child. Everybody loves her. Capture. The traitor was captured trying to escape from the country. Her beauty captured him and he swore to stay with her forever. Congregate. The crowds congregated in the square in front of the palace when they heard the news of the king's death. Cowardly. When I was a boy, I was too cowardly to go out at night. Feeble. The old lady's feeble hands could hardly hold a small cup. Identical. It is the identical coat that I lost a month ago. Perpetual. Bathing in the fountain of youth is supposed to assure perpetual beauty. Twilight. The old man likes to take a walk in the twilight. Unfair. The spectators were disappointed at the unfair decision by the umpire. Vacant. She had a few vacant rooms to rent for the students. Veracity. Since you have lied to us in the past, you should not wonder that we doubt your veracity. Part 3. Applause. When the singer ended his song on the stage, there was a great applause in the concert hall. Brutal. The murder was so brutal that the jury was not allowed to see the police photographs. Defiance. He shouted in defiance of the policeman's warning to be quiet. Demonstrate. How can you demonstrate that the world is round? Eloquence. The eloquence of the president moved all hearts who listened to him. Exclusive. He donated a lot of money to join the exclusive club. I have the exclusive rights for the sale of Ford cars in this town. Initiative. She took the initiative in getting acquainted with her neighbors. Reluctant. He was very reluctant to give his money away. Risky. Because of advances in medical technology, heart surgery is not as risky as it formerly was. Terminate. The policeman terminated the quarrel by sending the boys home. Typify. Abraham Lincoln typifies the politician who rises from humble origins to a position of power and influence. Part 4. Adapt. When you go to a foreign country, you must adapt yourself to new manners and customs. Clash. She clashed the two pans together to wake us up. There are many clashes of opinion in that family, for no two of them think alike. Compromise. The disagreement about the boundary between the two countries was settled by compromise. Era. The years from 1817 to 1824 in the United States history are often called the era of good feeling. Gulp. After running 1,000 meters, the runner became thirsty and gulped a bowl of water. Proprietor. I wasn't satisfied with our treatment at that hotel. I shall write and complain to the proprietor. Revise. When you know the facts, you may revise your opinion. Superstition. She has a superstition that breaking a mirror brings bad luck. Tract. During last summer's flood, a large tract of farmland was under water. Wail. The little baby wailed until his mother entered the room. Wither. The grass withered and died for lack of water under the hot sun.